Nice. We got a nice little crisp, beer top pop
Yeah.
there, Chris.
This one was filled to the very brim.
Filled to the brim. Did we have some spillage?
Well, just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit.
Oh, this is the tiniest. Okay, well, that's all right. That's all
Yeah,
right.
no biggie.
No biggie. And Chris, what are you drinking tonight? You were showing me this very, very purple and indigo can.
Relic Brewing Company Violet Ray Citrus
Nice.
India Pale Ale. Uh,
Ooh.
yeah, it's pretty tasty. You know, the beer, this explosion of beer, local brewing,
Explosion.
this explosion of local brewing
Uh-huh.
has brought on this whole new art form of, beer can art.
Actually, it has. I notice this whenever I go into, my local liquor stores and I go over to the craft beer section, it's just full of colors, artwork, beautiful designs,
I know.
very
I'm,
appealing.
I'm saying, I'm thinking it's like a field. It's going to be like a art school. It's going to be like beer, majoring in beer can.
Craft beer can design specialist. Yeah, hey, why not? Why not?
Why not? What do
Susan,
you have? What do you have?
oh,
Show us,
oh,
show us your colorful beverage of the.
okay, well, thank you for reminding me, Chris, because this has really gone into a part of my fun today. This is a mango margarita that comes ready to drink in a can, and it is not expensive. I think it's called like a mango rita. I'm always drinking something colorful and a little bit strange. And since I knew I would be drinking this, I used it as inspiration for my eyeshadow colors. If you
Fantastic.
notice the orange,
Now all you need is some Cheetos.
all I need is some Cheetos, exactly, to just kind of pull it all together. I've got a little bit of yellow here. It's not an orange
Okay.
thing. I have some purple going on. We try to keep it colorful in quarantine.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just,
I know. I do.
I know I do. Speaking of keeping it colorful in quarantine, Chris, you've got a new beard look going on right now.
Yeah, I went in, to Shea Fred's and do something, make me pretty. And no, actually, I did this while I was watching TV or something, and I just this is like, the equivalent of chewing one's nails. And I just have, I have all this fur here, and I say, well, why don't I just,
Let's
goof
just
around?
twirl it up. Let's make it look like those paintings of Greek gods. I think it's good. I like it. I like it the way it's going on.
My daughter loves it, so I'm keeping it. Oh, there's mom. There's your
That's so
mom.
sweet. Yes, there's mom.
Happy belated birthday, mom.
Happy birthday, mom. Yesterday was mom's birthday.
Right.
Hey.
39.
39 exactly. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
And it was also your wife's birthday this weekend. Happy birthday.
Today.
Oh, it's today. It's today. That's right. That's right.
Today, here I am. And it was my mother-in-law's birthday yesterday. Her mother turned 94 yesterday.
Incredible.
Yep. And so they had a good time. Look who's here, Philip J. Curtis.
Hey, Philip.
In parentheses.
He
How are
said
you?
I should say hello. February.
Susan Davis' birthday is tomorrow, March
Hey.
1st.
Happy birthday, Susan.
How about that?
Well, and just a few weeks ago, it was our friend Philip J. Curtis's birthday as well. We've got just all these stars being born in this season.
That's
Wonderful.
Right. This is the time of year when the hipsters are born. Apparently.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Well, also, in addition to your curls, normally I flat iron my hair many times before the show, and I'm just letting the waves happen today. I'm not sure if y'all can see it. You've got some curls, I've got some waves, we've got orange margaritas and purple beers. This is where we're at almost a year into quarantine, but we're having fun.
Long may you wave. Go for it.
It's all good.
All good.
It's all good, and it's all fun, and it's the best to be here tonight at FUMFA 43, FUMFA Poets and Writers Live, number 43. And we're so excited tonight to have Wendy Sloan, poet Wendy Sloan, and memoirist Alicia Delory with us. And they are going to be reading for us tonight. We have 2 feature readings from them tonight. So we'll get started soon. But Chris, what do we have coming up after this week that the audience should get excited about and maybe volunteer for?
Yeah, we got so much going on. It's crazy. Next week, we're going to celebrate International Women's Day.
Woo!
Now, International Women's Day is what? We're of course meeting on Sunday, but the women's
a day or two beforehand. I believe it's March 8th.
Okay, yes. So next week, but we're going to celebrate that, and we have an all-star lineup. An
all-star lineup of ladies.
We got the one and only Eugenia Kim. We finally roped her in and got her on. We got Rachel Bash is coming back, Christine Kubek, Casey Lee Ford, Meg Moore, Anna Evans. They're all going to be reading from their favorite women authors, and some will be reading from their own work as well, inspired by those authors. The following week, we got open mic night, and
yes,
it's pretty wide open. It's pretty wide open. So if you all out there are interested in reading, giving us like 5 to 8 minutes or something like that of your work, and are interested, let us know, and we will be in touch. The week after that, we got Elizabeth Kirshner and Barb Jens, who's the poet laureate of Ridgefield, Connecticut, and the week after that, we've got our anniversary show, and then down the line, we need to acknowledge, right? We're gonna celebrate the Fairfield Book Prize
finalists.
And congratulations to these guys: Victoria Buitron, Mike Belanger, Samantha Keller, Rebecca Dimian, Ryan Stovall. They're all going to be on the show in May, and then in June we're going to break it up. And we're going to hear a little bit of all the work that has been nominated for the upcoming 2021 Fairfield Book Prize.
Yes.
Very exciting.
It is super exciting. I'm getting a little echo on your end. Oh, I think I was just so excited. It just flew through the internet. You heard it twice. Yeah, Chris. So exciting. We have all that great stuff coming up for you. And yes, please get in touch with us. That will be like our open mic of the springtime. So if you would like to read, share your work, maybe even a little bit of something new if you're a returning reader, please get in touch with us. And we would love to have you on. And let's get into our bios for tonight. Once again, it's FUMFA 43, and we have 43. And we have Wendy Sloan and Alicia Delory with us tonight. We're going to be hearing from Wendy Sloan first, and let me share a little bit about Wendy with you. Wendy Sloan practiced labor and civil rights law with the firm of Holland Sloan before returning to poetry. Her collection is Sunday Mornings at the Cafe Mediterranean. Sloan's poems and Italian translations have appeared in many journals, including Big City Lit, Blue Unicorn, Light, Measure, Mezzo Camine, The Orchard, Think, and Umbrella, and in the anthologies The Able Muse Translations issue, The Best of the Raintown Review, Extreme Sonnets, The Great American Wise Ass Poetry Anthology, Love Affairs at the, yeah, I like that name, that title. Love Affairs at the Villa Now, and Poems for a Liminal Age, benefiting Medicine Sans Frontier. Doctors Without Borders, UK. She is the feature poet in the current issue of Mezzo-Camine Poetry Journal, published in honor of the journal's founder, Dr. Kim Bridgeford, at mezzocamine.com. Sloan has been a finalist in the Howard Nemerov Sonnet Award competition, and several of her poems have been nominated for a Pushcart Prize. She lives in New York City, where she co-hosts the Carmine Street Metrics Poetry Reading Series. We are so excited to welcome Wendy.
Oh, thanks so much, Katie, for that.
Welcome, Wendy.
Your work, and Chris, too.
Yes.
It's really great to be here. It's great to have contact with other human beings, however, virtually.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And we're so excited to hear you read. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you. Well, I thought I'd start with 3 poems by or about artists, actually 1 painter and 1 poet. So the painter is Frida Kahlo. And just one thing to note, there's a reference in this poem to Breton. That's André Breton, the founder of the Surrealist movement. He included Kahlo's work in an exhibition of Surrealists in Paris. Okay. Incantations to Frida Kahlo. And there's an epigraph. I hope the end is joyful, and I hope never to come back. Frida Kahlo, last diary entry. Down life's long promenade in slow motion collapse, to love's low serenade, far too fragile to last, with the struggle for justice still eluding your grasp. One more miscarried fetus, one more painful relapse. The inside turned outside to reveal and to feel your reality, though Breton called it surreal. Through self-portrait you posed a definitive cure and left us your image with power to endure. Green as wild monkeys, soft as a doe, androgynous lover, daughter of earth. Doves are not free from the chains of their birth, from their hearts, from their bodies, soon broken in 2. No, I never would ask you to suffer again. It just changes everything, doesn't it? Pain. Okay, so, and second is the poet, Veronica Franco. Franco lived in the 1500s in Venice, Italy, the Cinquecento, as Italians call it. She participated in the literary salon of Domenico Venier, and that salon was very famous, was attended by everyone who was anyone in Venice at the time, all the aristocracy, clergy, artists, musicians, and so on. And people passing through Venice, which a lot of people did and wanted to do, since it was a center of culture and trade at the time. Franco was a cortigiana onesta, an honored courtesan, and as such, she was, since she was very prominent and very famous, she was kind of an international sex symbol of her day. When she was 28 years old, the Republic of Venice retained her to entertain the 23-year-old Henry III of Valois when he was passing through Venice en route to be crowned King of France. And there's an interesting diary entry of one of Henry's attendants that one night after the banquet and the theater, he was last seen out late, cruising the canals in a gondola with his cousin, the Duke of Ferrara. And after that, his whereabouts were unknown that night and the next day and the next night. His meeting with Franco was clandestine at the time. But about a year later, she published a book of her letters, a volume of her letters, and she included 2 sonnets to Henry that she had written, which, of course, I'm going to read one of them. It's this is a translation, of course, from the Italian, and you'll see it's a kind of sly combination of flattery of the king and self-promotion. Was good advertisement for Franco. Sonnet to Henry III. Just as when Jove, descending from the sky to humble roofs, assumed a human guise, in order to protect mere mortal eyes from his great splendor, so Henri to my poor shelter came, without the dazzling blind of royal pomp, a king fated to reign supremely over such a broad domain as one world cannot grasp or keep confined. Even in this disguise, he shined a ray that so impressed his merit into my heart, it melted all my natural strength away, and, certain of affection on my part, graciously took, as he went on his way, my image in enamel cloisonné. So Franco, she was basically dealt a bad hand and played it very well. Her mother had been a courtesan, so she kind of, she was raised to that. And she had a relationship for some time with one of Domenico Venier's nephews, Marco Venier, a man who rose to prominence in Venice later on. So, I was imagining what Veronica would say to Marco if she had a chance to speak to him or write to him now. And that's this poem in her voice. Looking back, Veronica writes to Marco, and there's an epigraph. In 1575, famed Venetian courtesan Veronica Franco published clandestinely a volume of her poetry. She included poems by male friends with whom she had engaged in poetic dialogue. Only one man, Marco Venier, is named as the author of one poem. The rest are designated incerto autore, author unknown. We played at our seductive repartee, a deft exchange that neither one mistook for love. You had your fling, I wrote my book. But who was fooling who is hard to say. Now looking back, I wonder, after all, was that not love? The end was mere cliche, when after our affair you went your way, your slow, determined rise to power. My fall was only too predictable, and yet, if not for me, by now your faded shade would hover in some deep Elysian glade among the long forgotten, past regret. Who gave to whom then immortality? You live through me, my love. You live through me. Well, while we're in Italy, you can see I'm kind of an Italophile. I would like to go back to Italy someday, especially southern Italy. And this is Ruins of Paestum. 1. The Greek temples, circa 500 BC. The stucco paints long faded from their faces, stark Doric colonnades, stone-breathing traces of vibrancy enshrined in measured mien. In the meadows all is silence, sun, serene. We are alone, but for the spirits past, and watch small insects crawl beneath wildflowers. And reaching ages back, we nearly grasp time suspended in continuum, now ours. 2. The Diver. Fresco on the inside lid of a Greek tomb, 475 BC. Poised in midair above a turquoise sea, the diver is caught for an eternity in a gesture at once so simple yet profound, the passing of a soul. Without a sound, he glides from this world into that beyond. A graceful half-moon tilting towards the pond, his body's firm perfection serves to show this going takes him where he ought to go. 3. Modern structures. On approach, the museum screams fascist design. Surely, Mussolini's monument to himself, this style of chilling, no, cruel austerity. And then the sign, built in 1952, from plans drawn up in 1939. So modern history haunts this sanctum too. Across the ruins, in a garden with temple view, after wine and a fine caprese in the shade, we rouse ourselves as the siesta fades and enter the inn just for a look, to find the stairway walls conspicuously lined with black and white photos, prominently displayed. Young girls in ancient garb dance for a crowd. And yes, there he is himself. Il Duce stands proud, his military array, his firmly folded hands. Dead young thing. Leave it out back, he said. No one will know. And no one did. And no one cared or thought about us. Why would they? I went to school like everybody else. I looked the same, a little quieter. Yeah, I was scared, mostly at night. The daytime was all right until I started feeling sick again. I prayed the faint would go away. It did, but I kept getting bigger and I hid myself in looser clothes. He never stopped, before or after. Anyway, I knew he never would. I left it, like he said, inside the dumpster by the courtyard stair. Then we would go on like we had before, but this one cried and lived, and we got caught. I still can't sleep at night. I have this dream. He picks me up. I'm screaming as I fall down on the garbage slime. You see, it's me who was dead for him, right from the start. Since I'm in jail, I've got a better place to be. Oh, change of pace. Time to lighten up, léger, as they say. On first looking into recent blood work. The good news, I've got antibodies. Yay! The bad news, I had COVID? What the hell? How did I even get it? Hard to tell. Until mid-March, I went out every day. Was it the mailman with the hacking cough? That grocery clerk? She seemed a little off. Some elevator button my hand touched despite the plastic gloves? That guy who clutched his phone with sneezes no mask could deter? I guess I'll never really know for sure. I wonder, too, how much am I protected? Some experts say I could get reinfected, and one weird complication makes me pout. I've noticed that my hair is falling out. Okay, everybody knows about the first voyage of Ulysses and how patient Penelope was when she had to wait 20 years for him to come home. But his second voyage is a little less well known, except to fans of poetry. There's a famous poem by Tennyson about it. And actually, Dante created it. He wrote a canto. It's known as the Canto of Ulysses. So, I was wondering, how Penelope must have felt when she realized that Ulysses was leaving again. And that gave rise to this poem. My Ulysses is departing on his second voyage. And there's an epigraph. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce. Karl Marx. Yeah, right. Okay, I get it. The guy thing, the searching, risking, going, and the sting of ever-present danger goads you on. So, let me guess. You're sailing with the dawn while I stay put. I take my risks at home. Bearing another child is risk enough for me. No, I am disinclined to roam, and you and I are made of different stuff. I won't be waiting this time. There's a point beyond which even true love cannot go. You've got your band of buddies to anoint your head and make burnt offerings. We both know there's little of our marriage left to parse. And like they say, the second time is farce. Indeed. All right, I'm going to close with two poems that I wrote very recently this summer to my husband. He's been fading the last few years. And the first one is in a form called a guzzle, or as I heard Marilyn Hacker, the poet, pronounce it recently, huzzle. It's was originally Arabic form and used a lot also in Pakistan and India. And it's written in couplets with the last word in each couplet the same, repeated over and over. And this poem is called Word. Then came the year you kept repeating, Wendy, till you had but a single greeting, Wendy. Your world reduced to just one proper noun for anyone you chanced on meeting, Wendy. Each thing you saw, each thing you touched, for every phrase you were completing, Wendy. Though I was pleased that you still knew my name alone, this soon proved self-defeating, Wendy being the only way you had of naming, being, that is, a form of cheating Wendy and everyone else to get by. All day, your sole response, incessant bleeding, Wendy. And once you stopped, you'd no more names at all. Now I could shake you, plead, entreating, Wendy! And I'll close with this. Nighttime. And there's an epigraph, as there so often is, I now realize, in my poems. He's unable to speak now, and his bed is pushed up against mine, the rail on his lowered. Most recently, your habit is to sprawl out horizontally across your bed and onto mine. At night, I feel you crawl still closer, and I stroke your curly head. And when we're half awake, you take my hand and hold it tight a minute in your own. I wonder, do you even understand? This is the most affection that I've known these 5 long years. I know that I am more to you than keeper of the time you steal. It's decades, darling, decades long before your illness, that we put the fatal seal upon our pact. Yes, show me you're still there, and in what mine is left to you, you care. 2. All lies. Last night you took my hand all right, to shove it off, away from you. Last night you shoved my hand abruptly when it lay on yours. You pushed it hard, as if to say, did you forget, baby, how much I've changed? How I detest the slightest touch? And you recoiled from mine. I know you're ill. You can't control the damage to your brain, though you could compensate, in part, and will attempt to, temporarily, retrain. Still, as I kiss your lips goodnight, you rise to meet mine, and you look me in the eye. And on my life, I'd swear that kiss is true. But nobody can say, not even you. Okay, thank you, Katie and Chris.
Thank you so much, Wendy. It's so gorgeous. Those paws have got tears. Absolutely gorgeous.
Breaking, powerful stuff.
Heartbreaking, beautiful, powerful, and that journey through Italy and history, just incredible. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you. Thank you both. It's been a real pleasure to be here.
Stick around for Q&A because
of course.
We're going to have some questions.
Okay.
Yes, everybody hold on to your questions for Wendy for around 8 o'clock when we go into our Q&A. So many great things to ask her about. And now Chris is going to introduce Alicia Delory.
I am, and I'm going to start off with Alicia's bio. Alicia Delory is a freelance writer, editor, and content strategist. And in 2021, that's this year, she will also be a TEDx speaker. Cool. Going to have to ask her about that. She is the author of the forthcoming memoir called Something is Better Than Nothing from our friends at Running Wild Press.
Woo!
And she's currently working on her second book. She's a graduate of Georgia Southern University and Fairfield University, where she received her MFA in creative writing. She's originally from Warwick, Rhode Island, or Warwick, as they say, and currently lives in Savannah, Georgia, with her husband and daughter. You can pre-order a signed copy of her book and support a great independent bookstore at www.eshaverbooks.com, just like it sounds, is how it's spelled. And oh, by the way, her book was selected by BookBub as an Editor's Choice featured new release for March of this year.
Woo!
So, how about that?
Alicia!
I knew
There
it was coming.
she is.
It'll surprise me.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome, Alicia. We're excited to hear you read.
Take it away.
All right. So I'm going to start with the first essay in my memoir, Something is Better Than Nothing, called Homecoming. I'm just going to dive right in. My husband didn't return home in a flag-draped silver casket. No uniformed men came to my door telling me that he wasn't coming home. He wasn't immortalized with a patriotic motorcade or a 3-volley salute. No member of an honor guard presented me with a 13-fold American flag. Specialist Barksdale wasn't listed among the killed, wounded, or missing in action soldiers of Operation Enduring Freedom. And because none of these things happened, I flipped through the pages of my calendar and traced a heart around March 22nd, 2012, with the word Chris scribbled in the middle. I thought my days spent alone and waiting had come to an end. I didn't know then that they had barely begun. I was about to learn the true meaning of loneliness. Specialist Barksdale arrives in Germany, worn and weary on his own 2 feet, marching into the gymnasium that's crudely decorated with handmade poster board signs, after standing outside for nearly an hour in the freezing cold because some of the wives were running late for the homecoming ceremony. A fog machine meant to create a dramatic effect, because nothing lacks drama like a bunch of men returning home from war, fills the gym with thick fog that leaves the attendees choking on its showmanship. The happy sobs and cheers of the family members of his platoon blare and echo off the walls as the soldiers enter the foggy gymnasium. It's a cruel way to welcome someone home from war, but I don't know that yet. I'm too wrapped up in my own jubilation to notice much else, so I stand tall in the bleachers, screaming and holding up my poorly drawn "Welcome Home Specialist Barksdale" sign, ugly crying, and scanning the crowd for my husband. I was the first one there. I got the call that they were wheels up, and I grabbed the sign I'd made and I ran out the door to collect my man. I'd spent the evening primping, picking out the right outfit, and naring parts of my body that hadn't seen a razor since Chris had come home for R&R 7 months before. Our apartment is clean from top to bottom. I have a fridge full of food and snacks warming in the crock pot. They told us at the family readiness group meetings not to introduce too much change too fast, as reintegration is a delicate process. I decided that small changes were permissible. An accent table here, new curtains there, a French bulldog puppy, and a newly blonde 70 pounds lighter wife. But otherwise, everything would be exactly as he left it. We'd arrived in Ansbach, Germany 2 years before. He was fresh out of basic training, and I'd just finished my bachelor's degree. I also just warmed to the idea of picking up my entire life to follow him wherever his career took him. 6 months before I joined him in Germany, we were living with his father and stepmother in Eden, Georgia. Chris had just told me he wanted to join the army, and I was throwing my engagement ring at his head. We were supposed to have a long engagement. I was supposed to go to grad school. He was supposed to save up money and go to nursing school. So you just up and decide to enlist, and I'm supposed to drop everything and follow you around. I've been thinking about this for a while. Fuck you, I screamed as my white gold and half-carat engagement ring bounced off his neck. I pulled my empty suitcase from the top of the closet and began throwing in whatever I could. He left to join his father in the living room. I don't know how I came around or even the conversation that followed. I just remember that 1 minute he was leaving me in the bedroom to angrily pack my suitcase, and the next I was sitting on the bed with him saying, "Okay, tell me what you have in mind." While he sold me on his plan to pay off his debts and create a stable life for us, and suddenly we were planning to get married 4 weeks later, more than 2 years earlier than we'd planned. We convinced ourselves that it made sense. After all, we were already engaged. I could get on his medical insurance. We could have a home of our own instead of bouncing between my college dorm and his father's house. We wouldn't have to be in a long-distance relationship for the next 2 years, waiting until the army allowed him some time off to marry me. It did make sense. That's what we told ourselves. In reality, we were 22, and we knew our engagement wouldn't survive if he left. I knew getting married that young was a bad idea, but I wasn't ready to be without him. I loved him. Love was a good enough reason. It had to be. I remember him talking to me on our wedding day as we took photos on his father's back porch, telling me how different our lives would be, how we wouldn't be stuck with a shitty car anymore, like the $500 beat-up Honda Civic that you could hear from a mile away, held together mostly by duct tape. It was a manual, and I couldn't drive it, despite Chris trying on 4 separate occasions to teach me how to use a stick shift. "Baby, someday we'll be able to afford fancy things like an iron," he said, completely straight-faced and certain that his enlistment would make our lives better. We just had to get through the next few months. We'd be married, and less than 24 hours later, he'd be leaving for basic training. As a joke, my mother-in-law gave us an iron as a wedding gift. "See, things are already looking up," he said. So, for his homecoming, I figured he'd be happy to see how the fruits of his labor paid off. Because if there's one thing soldiers worry about during wartime, it's being able to afford home decor and cute puppies for their newly slim wives. I spend my time frantically searching the small group of maybe 40 soldiers for Chris's face, with little luck. Later, when I view the photographs that fellow onlookers snapped that day, I'll see Chris standing in formation, his eyes fixed forward, staring at nothing and everything, while some officer who probably doesn't know his name and who spent a year sitting behind a desk in a pile of paperwork welcomes him home and reminds the crowd that they are in the company of American heroes. "Where is he? I don't see him. Why can't I see him?" I whisper to my friend Taryn, who's accompanied me this morning to take pictures, and who only knows Chris from the pictures I've shown her at work. He has sandy brown hair and big blue eyes and the longest eyelashes I've ever seen on a man. He isn't a tall guy, but I forgive that because of his stocky build, broad shoulders, and his effortless six-pack. I affectionately refer to him as my pocket-sized Rambo. He has a permanent, beautiful set of dimples. When he walks, he has a literal pep in his step, due in part to short Achilles tendons, and in part to his chronically cheerful demeanor. In the months, weeks, and days leading up to his deployment, I'd look at him, trying to memorize everything about him. That face that always put me at ease. His voice, he almost never raised, with its soft, subtle Georgia dialect that always sounded like home. The kindness of his eyes and the way they always seemed to smile when he talked or whenever he looked at me. The way his dimples always stayed intact even when he was upset or sad, acting like little beacons of hope, always reassuring me and everyone around him that all would be well. I loved that the most. Promise you'll stay you, I'd urge him, and he'd smile at me and promise, of course, sweetie, I'm not going anywhere. Promise you'll come home? Of course, sweetie. We repeated this exchange like a mantra while I held him and said goodbye to him in the parking lot behind the barracks the night he left. Like if we said it enough, it would be etched into whatever cosmic plan was laid out for the next 12 months, and he would come home just fine, alive, and in one piece, whatever the hell I thought that meant. While he was in Afghanistan, we would video chat a few times a month, sometimes less. His voice got deeper and hoarser as his deployment wore on. So each time we talked and I asked, "You still you?" his response of, "I'm still me," grew more and more mechanical and less convincing. After a short speech, the soldiers are dismissed and a stampede of happy family members rushes into the dispersing formation of green. Another sadistic gesture in our unrelenting effort to welcome home a group of men and women who spent the last year of their lives in a permanent state of hypervigilance. There, right there, Taryn points at a man about Chris's height, but who looks a bit older, not in a wrinkly and gray type of way, but in the way that cracks and pavement give away the weight of its many burdens. I beeline toward the man who looks vaguely like an older, exhausted version of my husband, my arms outstretched and my face contorted from tears of joy and relief. When he sees me, his face remains tired, and he uses what little energy he has to raise his arms slightly away from his sides. I grab him and hold him tight as I cry into his neck and shoulder, no doubt leaving a trail of tears and snot behind, another fine way to receive a soldier back into his civilian life. You're here. I'm sorry I'm boogering all over you. You're here. He pushes my face away so my eyes meet his. I'm here. Why are you crying? I'm here. He says, not comforting me, but urging me to get a hold of myself. This reaffirmation of his presence makes my crying louder and more dramatic, and I bury my face back into his uniform and sob some more, until finally some older woman I don't know hands me a tissue and smiles at me with tears in her eyes. A photographer is capturing vignettes of each family's reunion. A few months from now, a photo of our embrace will be blown up and plastered outside the new post exchange. And at first I'll love it and I'll feel special that our picture is on display for all to see. My love for it will fade though, and eventually I'll cringe every time I see it. When we move back to Georgia, I'll be relieved because I won't have to stare at that fucking picture of those two strangers anymore. We step off to the side to pose for photos, Specialist Barksdale mustering up his best version of a smile, and our pose is looking like an awkward middle school dance portrait. I will love these pictures at first, the way I loved the PX photo. I'm so blissfully, obliviously relieved and happy because my prayers for him to come home alive have been answered. There are different kinds of survival, but I don't know that yet either. In the months that follow, I'll find him sitting around the house, staring into space like his brain is a skipping CD. I'll get used to him scanning other cars when we drive anywhere, and looking around for anything resembling a threat as we walk hand in hand through the mall. His mind will always be somewhere else, rarely with me or our life together. I'll see him on alert all day long and wonder what he's bracing himself for, but I know that asking will only make him angry and feel even more alienated. Each incident will drop another hint that the Chris I knew never came back, and wherever he is now, he exists in some limbo between there and here. They trained me to be there. No one taught me how to be here. From time to time, I'll picture him back in that gymnasium, bombarded by a hero's welcome, looking more exhausted than anyone I'd ever seen, as the crowd disperses to partake in coffee and pastries and friendly hellos. My soldier, who's returned to me safely, just as he'd promised, grabs my hand and pleads, "Let's just get my stuff off the bus and go home. I just want to go home." I don't see the desperation in his face as clearly as I will later on. His voice will play in my head through every episode, every panic attack, every time he scans a crowd. I just want to go home. Fun fact, the girl taking the pictures in that chapter did this picture for the cover. So that's actually from that day. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to read a piece from the second book I'm working on. I call it Funny Girl. That's the work title. That's not what it's going to be. But I use that as the title to kind of keep me focused on how I want the chapters to go. This is a little more lighthearted. I don't want to end on something so heavy. So this is called The Hay Bale. While everyone else is out in their yards cleaning up after the hurricane, I'm sweeping off my front porch. The contents of my Home Depot garden center haul are piled in front of my garage door, waiting to be hung and planted in my perfect little clay pots. 2 doors down, there are 2 trees laying on top of Miss Marion's roof, reminding me that I am one of the lucky ones. Convoys of linemen parade through our streets, trying to turn the lights back on in a neighborhood that's been dark for almost a week. People come and go on their property, hauling away sectioned tree limbs and salvaging what they can from their homes. I am potting my red and orange mums. I'd taken up gardening after my first miscarriage as some sort of ill-conceived quest to prove that I could sustain and nurture life, though I'd killed every single plant I'd ever owned. I'd even tried my hand at succulents, which I'd been assured were nearly impossible to kill, only to end up sitting in my sunroom a few weeks later, surrounded by dead cacti. These mums would surely meet the same fate as my tomato and squash plants in a few weeks' time, but my husband Chris won't say a word. He'll tell me how nice they look and how all these plants seem to liven things up, or how each new houseplant I bring in improves the air quality in our home. He'll continue humoring and funding my trips to the garden center, supporting whatever this need of mine is to keep chasing this notion of being the woman with the green thumb. Miss Williams sweeps debris from her driveway as my husband walks up and down the street, offering cold bottles of water to the landscapers, linemen, and the neighbors. I'm adorning my front porch with hanging baskets and pumpkins. In the back right-hand corner of the porch is a pile of straw, which used to be a securely fastened bale of hay. "Looks great, sweetie," my husband shouts from the street as he smiles and greets both neighbors and strangers, offering cold water and a helping hand as he passes by. Too bad he's an asshole. We went to Home Depot earlier that day. Most of the stores had opened back up after the hurricane, and we're among the last 1% of residents without power because the tornado had touched down at the end of our street, ripping out power lines. Chris wanted to get more batteries and flashlights and items for the generator. I wanted to buy pumpkins and decorate my porch for fall. There was nothing better to do, and I wasn't about to resort to doing yard work. Yards have bugs and snakes and creepy crawlies, and no thank you. As Chris ventured through the aisles getting post-hurricane necessities, I circled through the seasonal aisle picking out pumpkins. The store was crowded with others in the area who were also without power and cleaning up after the storm, but the seasonal aisle was empty. It seemed I alone had chosen to pass the time by decorating for fall. I noticed a lone bale of hay sitting near a pumpkin display. Chris politely maneuvered his cart through the crowd and made his way to me. "Can I get this?" I asked, holding up the hay bale. "If that's what you want," he said, smirking. I slid the rectangular bundle of straw in the bottom of the shopping cart. Chris rolled the shopping cart to the closest register, and the line extended down the front of the store and wrapped around the light bulb aisle. "They've only got 2 registers open?" I asked, already losing my patience. "Everybody and their mother's here." "There's nobody at self-checkout. Can we just do that?" "You know I don't like doing that," he said. Normally, we didn't use self-checkout registers, believing that in doing so, we were helping companies take jobs away from actual humans. Unfortunately, my patience almost never outlasted my principles. "I'm not waiting in this line," I moaned, as I grabbed the cart and pushed it toward the empty kiosk. "Sweetie, we have a lot of stuff," Chris said, trailing behind me. I kept moving and began scanning my items. "It's fine," I mumbled, as Chris conceded and a line formed behind us. I had no qualms about taking so many items through the self-checkout because I was always very quick. In no time at all, I scanned all but one of our items. I pulled my bale of hay out from the bottom of my shopping cart. One of the strings got snagged and the bundle loosened, leaving a trail of straw. "Sweetie, how are you going to scan that?" he asked. There's got to be a tag on it somewhere, I said, stubbornly searching for a barcode as more and more straw fell onto the scanner and the floor. I could feel the glares of the customers behind me. Their whispers blared in my ears and made it hard to concentrate. From the corner of my eye, I watched as Chris bowed his head in embarrassment, smiling nervously. He turned to the frustrated people behind us, shrugging and mouthing, "I'm sorry," as he grinned and shook his head. His betrayal stung and left me feeling even more flustered. "There's got to be a fucking tag on here somewhere," I snapped. "Sweetie, you're making a mess." I continued to search for the tag. Here it is," I screamed, feeling victorious and waving the purple tag in the air as more and more of my hay bale sprinkled all over the place. I tried to scan the barcode, but it wouldn't scan. Why the fuck isn't it scanning? "Do you have the right tag?" Chris asked, smiling out of the corner of his mouth at the line of customers. "There's only one fucking tag." "Sweetie, you got hay everywhere." I could hear the customers talking about me. Some of them weren't even trying to whisper anymore. Some of them laughed at me. Some of them shook their heads and rolled their eyes. And my husband was on their side. I wiped a pile of hay off the glass of the scanner and dragged the purple tag across it once more, this time ending with a triumphant beep. "There, see? It works. It's not my fault the scanner sucks." By this point, my bale was no longer a bale, but a small pile of straw, as I'd lost so much hay that the strings failed to hold it together. I stubbornly scooped my pile of hay and threw it in the cart, indignantly rolling it out to the car and leaving a trail of straw in my wake. Chris finished paying and followed the hay trail through the parking lot and met me at the car. By the time he caught up with me, I'd loaded all of the items into the back, save for my hay bale. We looked at each other for a moment, him pleading with me to budge from my ridiculous commitment to the pile of straw. Not to be persuaded, I scooped up the pile from the bottom of the cart and threw it in the back of my car and slammed the hatch shut. Chris returned the cart, the stray remnants of my hay bale sprinkling behind him. I sat in the passenger seat of my car, slouched down with my arms folded across my chest. I stared at the window, seething as Chris drove us home. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're not talking to me." "It's fine." We arrived home. I opened the hatch of my car, and more hay sprinkled onto the ground. Chris started giggling at my hay pile, which had spread out and made a huge mess in the back of my car. His laughter only made me angrier, and I shoved past him and scooped up what was left of my little hay bale, which wasn't much, since I'd lost about half of it on the journey from the self-checkout kiosk to the car. I carried my hay to the back corner of my porch and dropped it there. I grabbed 2 pumpkins from the back of my car and piled them on top. "There, perfect," I said, as I grabbed a broom that was propped up against my garage door and began sweeping the mess I'd made in the driveway. Chris grinned, shook his head, and went about unloading the rest of the car. My sister calls me while I'm on the porch. I tell her all about the afternoon's betrayal. "The line was out the door. I wasn't about to wait in that fucking line." "I don't blame you." "It was the last bale of hay and it was only $5.99. I had to get it, but he was all embarrassed and chimed in with the dickheads behind me." $5.99? You're paying too much for hay." "Amanda, that's not the point. We don't pay that much for hay." "Amanda, it's not about the hay, it's the principle." "Wait, you tried to take a bale of hay through the self-checkout?" "You're no help. You're just as bad as he is. I'll call you later." I'm hanging up my pumpkin wind chimes that I'd fished out of the garage when Chris walks up behind me. "Want some water?" he asks, holding out a bottle of water. "No, thanks." "What's the matter?" "Nothing." "Did you hear me earlier? I said it looks great," he says again, pointing to my hay pile and pumpkins. "Don't be a smartass." "I'm not being a smartass. I think it looks nice. What's wrong?" "You heckled me." "When?" "At the register. You busted my balls and you were rooting for me to fail." Tears well up in my eyes. "Are you serious right now?" "Those assholes were talking shit and laughing at my bale of hay. You just chimed in with them," I said, wiping tears from my eyes. "Sweetie, you were trying to self-check out a bale of hay. And you didn't support me." I cry harder, and he's torn between wanting to laugh his ass off and wanting to comfort me. "Sweetie, come on." "You're supposed to be my friend," I scream. The grin on his face disappears. "I am your friend," he says, hugging me. As I swat away his hug, our neighbor Danny has stumbled over with a beer in his hand and he's drunk off his ass. Power is still out, he slurs. Chris and I look at each other and try not to laugh as Chris offers him a bottle of water. Thank you all for listening. That's all I got tonight.
Alicia, what a fabulous reading.
That was great.
It was so good. A whole range of emotions there, all just powerful and really vivid stuff. Thank you so much, Alicia. And what a treat to have you both tonight. Let's get Wendy back up here. It's time. Oh, yes. Let's just give one more round of applause to our incredible readers. And Wendy Sloan, just incredible readings tonight. I laughed, I cried, I smiled, everything in between. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to have both of you here. As the audience is putting in their questions for each of you, for either one of you, for both of you, Chris and I always note that there ends up being some kind of serendipitous connection between whoever our readers are for the evening. And I thought it was so beautiful how both of you have brought to us these very tender relationship moments, each in your own way, and both kind of bringing us these moments of kind of joy, of wonder, but also really of heartbreak at the same time. I think this is another sort of serendipitous combination, Chris.
True. Things, they just it's amazing how often it happens, and there's a theme that emerges.
Yes. Oh, Zachary Brown is asking, where do we send questions? You can put them right into the chat, Zachary. We can see them, and we'll put them up on the screen. So if this is your first time joining us, you can put your questions into the chat on YouTube or on Facebook, and we'll go through them. We'll do our best to ask all of them before we finish up. So while you're typing in your questions, let's start with a question that we usually ask first, which is, we've existed as a live stream for as long as we've been in quarantine. So how has this whole COVID situation affected your writing? Has it inspired your writing? Have there been silver linings? Has it been really hard? How has it affected you? Wendy, I loved what you said in your poem, where you talk about having had COVID and you didn't realize it, and that was really fascinating to me. And going through this list in your head, like, oh, where did I get it from? Who could it be? And I feel like probably each of us have had moments like that in this past year. Yeah. But anyways, yes. How has it been with your writing during all of this? Maybe Wendy, you can start with us. Has it affected it much?
Well, in the fall of 2019, I joined a writer's room to have a space outside my house to go to and write. And
thank God for that.
But of course, once lockdown came, that was the end of my being able to go to this writer space. It was closed for a while. I think I don't know what the status is right now, but anyway, it's not appropriate for me. So last summer, when the infection rate was down below 1% in New York City, and New York City was very empty because and everyone who hadn't already left after Memorial Day. It was great. I could take long walks, and I would write while walking. So I wrote a lot over the summer, and since then, I have still done it really, I don't know how, because, it hasn't been ideal, an ideal
No.
situation, since I'm not alone here in the apartment, and I share it with other people.
Right, right.
So it's tough, but so I don't know. I've been doing it anyway, so
Yeah.
it's been okay.
We've
Um,
noticed a lot of poets that we've had on have written pandemic poems.
yes.
Right? I mean, there's going to be like a whole, I don't know, there's going to be
There's going to be anthologies,
anthologies and
a
collections.
whole, it's coming. The wave is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason, I have two, and both of them are funny. It's supposed to be fun.
A lot
I
of them have
really
been
enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like that's the only way I can deal with
laugh,
it.
right?
Yeah, I don't want to confront the. So far, I haven't wanted to confront the tragic,
Yeah.
tragic aspect.
Yeah, I hear you. And Alicia, what about you? How has it been this past year with your writing?
Writing wise, I'm probably every bit as productive or not as I was before. Truthfully, my life didn't really change all that much when I started quarantining right away.
Good.
Like mid-March, because I saw the movie Contagion, and that's an actual fear of life.
Do it.
Like mentally, I'm a little bit better, like not so much disinfecting groceries as much anymore, and like compulsively taking temperatures.
Right.
Vigilant, I would say. But in general, aside from not being able to go to the gym every day, I pretty much just bought a bunch of equipment and do it in my driveway now, and not going grocery shopping, which is like my favorite errand to do. It's business as usual here. I got to be honest.
Hey, well, as much as things, yeah.
I'm still in awe of people who get like a ton of writing done. When I'm like, I wrote 2 new pieces for my upcoming book, and I was just super proud of myself.
Hey, fair enough. That's great. And you've got a book coming out in the month of March, and tomorrow,
Yeah.
That's really incredible.
It's really exciting.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, we do have some questions now. We have a question for Alicia and also for Wendy. Chris, which one? You pick. Which one should go first?
Let's go to Wendy, just because she
taught
sort of
bounce back.
Zachary Brown.
For the talented Ms. Sloan, what inspired the use of that? How do you say that? Guzzle?
Guzzle?
Yeah, I usually have heard it pronounced guzzle, but more recently huzzle.
Right.
But yeah, I never heard that before.
Yeah. Did you find the format first and then write the poem, or did you have the content in mind and then discover the format? I'm always interested in this myself.
Yeah. Well, with me, it's different for every poem. I don't have like one way that I write a poem, but for this particular poem, I wanted to write it on this subject.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, since the subject is, the repetition of
That's
a word,
right.
I thought about repeating forms, and I think it's hard for me to. I think I tried or thought about a couple other things very briefly, and then thought about the guzzle form and wrote the first draft pretty quickly, and then of course make changes, but
I feel like this form is totally perfect. That poem was so powerful, the saying of your name and what it reveals about your husband and your relationship with him and what's happening. And I think it's just the perfect form because it repeats that one word. It doesn't necessarily have to rhyme. It's more about syllable count and about kind of each line being able to stand on its own if you wanted it to. And I feel like it was just totally perfect for that poem. I haven't attempted too many guzzles, but I have tried two, and yeah, I think it's just absolutely perfect. And
Yes.
you read both inform and not inform. You read some inform and some free verse for us tonight, Wendy.
I don't think any of these were free verse, actually.
Oh,
I
what?
did in the way I read it.
I missed some. I missed some of the forms. Then, oh no.
I think they're mostly sonnets, except
Okay.
that. Well, no.
I did catch that.
No, Ruins of Pestum is kind of I don't know what you'd call it.
The section.
It's more in it's written differently. Each section is different.
Okay.
It's various one of them's like a couple quatrains in iambic pentameter rhyming.
Okay.
But they're basically with that exception, and I wouldn't call that free verse.
No. I wouldn't.
Iambic pentameter, and it does rhyme, but the rest of them are mostly sonnets.
Yes. Yes,
So
and I definitely heard. I definitely heard the rhythm in there, and that's so great. And you co-host Carmine Street Metrics, which is a reading series of mainly formalist writers. Kim Richford was a reader there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Several times we had Kim read.
Wendy, where does that meet in normal times?
Well, in normal times, it was meeting in New York City at Otto's Shrunken Head Tiki Bar.
Yes.
Yeah, on East 14th Street was a great place. They had wonderful tiki drinks. Katie, you would love.
I went there the last time that you were there.
Kim read. I forgot about that.
It was so. That was so great.
I assume it's still open. I haven't been by there, frankly, in like a year, but yeah, now we meet on Zoom. We do.
So you've been doing virtual readings as well.
We have Zoom readings once a month.
Great.
Perfect. Well, we have a question for Alicia.
Susan M. Davis, congrats on your book, she says. And how is your husband doing now? Now he plays obviously a huge role in the book that's coming out now, and then of course he's in the news.
Laughing at that hay bale.
It's so great because in the first book, right? I mean, it's very it's very intense. He's coming back from this experience, and he's changed, and he's different, and we're worried about him. And it was very nice to see him, in action at Home Depot.
Hi, Susan. Thank you. I'm trying to answer this like tactfully without commenting too much on like another person's mental health.
Yeah.
In terms of the themes that we discuss in the book, where he's struggling, reconciling what happened to him in the military with what happened like with life. In terms of acclimating, he did the work that you'll read about in the book. Where now it's just another chapter in his story, right? It's not this weird thing that he has to run from. And in terms of our daily lives, that doesn't interfere the way that it did when that book was written, and I just couldn't ignore it anymore.
Right.
I personally think like now he misses the military. Anytime he talks about it, it's always with a fondness. It's always in any job he's in, it's always calling back to that. Like, this is a better way of doing things, and I can't, so with regard to that, he's good. He's good.
That is very good to hear.
The therapy did what it was supposed to do, which was, it was a process, but yeah, he did the work. It's just another part of his story. It's just like anything else, you learn to live with and move with it.
Yeah.
Right.
That
And it's not just him. It's, you know, it's you who has to go through this. Like you said, there's no training.
right.
I think the big thing is like everybody's like, did he get over it? Well, no, he never got over it. He just grew with it. They grew together and they learned to coexist. And he did the work and he continues to do the work, and it's definitely a very different place than it was when that book was written.
Right.
All right.
I have follow-up questions for you, Alicia, but I want to ask a question to Wendy as well. Wendy, according to your bio, you were in labor and civil rights law, and while you were a lawyer, were you writing at the time? Was that an escape for you? Was that an expression for you? Or did that come after your work there, after retirement? I'm interested in the connection between those two.
Yeah, no. No, I didn't write poetry while I was practicing law. I was a partner in a two-person firm. We did complex federal litigation. We worked all the time. It was very intense. And I also kind of used a different part of my brain. So, and I had, had trials, oral argument in federal court and so on.
Wow.
And no, I was just practicing law when I was practicing law. I had, extensive investigations running around town, looking for witnesses, interviewing witnesses. It was very intense. And I didn't write any poetry. I don't think the whole time I was practicing law.
Wow.
Were you reading poetry? I mean, how do you go from
How did you come into reading?
Yeah, I always read some.
Yeah. So you were interested in...
I always read. I read things other than, the journals, newspapers, court decisions. Yeah, I always read every fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. I always read all of those, except, when I absolutely couldn't because I was really working, 24/7.
Oh my God.
But
and so how did you go from this incredible life to being a formalist poet superstar?
Well, I had always written poetry before. I wrote poetry in childhood, and when I stopped practicing law, I went back to it, and I got involved, and so that's what I've been doing now.
Last follow-up question there. How did you get involved? Did you know people already who were part of a community or a writers group? How did you get connected? And
I found my way. I met them. How did I meet them? That's a good question.
Maybe it happened so naturally you just almost fell into it. I love that. I love that. I wish I could.
How I first actually hooked up with that group. But I did. There was one journal at the time in particular that was publishing a lot of the people that are still kind of my poetry colleagues. Were kind of all having their first work published there. And that journal was called Iams and Trochees. It's long defunct. The people who put it out passed away years ago for the most part. And they held readings. And they invited us all to come to the readings, and we met, and eventually we kind of took over.
Nice. You got connected, you got inspired. Yeah.
Do you think your law training and practice affected your poetry? I'm just thinking you're a formalist poet basically, and you're coming from the law. Is there sort of is there a connection there? Is it like the logic of the law and then you have the formalist, the rules of of
The argument and the sonnet.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think the only way that practicing law plays into my current poetry is just that, in terms of getting used to talking in front of audiences,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And,
But
kind of making a case with a
that's about
yeah.
no,
ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
But in terms of structure, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think I just always, as I said, I started writing when I was very young, and I like lyric poetry. I like the lyricism and the song and the sound aspects of poetry, and
and you started doing it.
Doing it, yeah.
That's great, Wendy. That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Alicia, I'm dying to ask you. You are a fellow alum like us of the Fairfield University Master of Fine Arts program. Did you go into the program knowing I'm doing nonfiction, I'm writing a memoir, this is what I want to write about? Was that formed afterward? Yeah.
So many layers to that. Okay, so one, I've always written nonfiction, and okay, so I don't want to say I wrote poetry because like no one would call it that, but I would write like crappy little like, poems, but it was always nonfiction, or it was fiction that was really nonfiction because and I remember writing a story. Sonia Huber can attest to this. I wrote a story in undergrad called Ashes, which was fiction, which ended up actually happening like 10 years later.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, it was always going to be nonfiction. I originally got in the program in 2010, but I deferred because we were overseas. So I didn't end up coming in till 2015. Which was well after all the events in the book had happened. So I don't know what I would have written.
Right.
Very interesting.
Earlier.
Right.
Because that I couldn't have. None of that had transpired. So
right.
Yeah, it was always going to be nonfiction. But awesome. in terms of the book I wrote, I didn't even know what book I was writing till 2 years into writing it because that whole Christmas wasn't in it.
Right.
Until Patrick was like, you should really talk about your time as a military wife. And I was like, that's just not that interesting to me. Because I was living and breathing his therapy and stuff, and I didn't want to talk. I wanted to come to one writing thing and have it be for me and not have him in it. So I was out of it. I'm not going to write about this.
That Bill Patrick.
Bill Patrick, he was like, no, this is where it's at.
And I did. And found the story.
That's awesome.
Sure did.
And so you formed the beginnings of the manuscript during the program, or the whole thing. And how did that go? Like once you started working on it during your time after Bill Patrick muscled you into.
Yeah. So
how did it go?
Yeah, it was this like about my father, and which like growing up with an alcoholic dad, like so original. But so I was having trouble making that work on its own, right? And not wanting to write about this, and then I had taken time. A lot of things happened. We'll just have to talk some other time. But a lot of things happened while I was in writing school that forced me to take like almost a year off.
Right.
And I would try to write about these things right as they happened.
Right.
And Eugenia Kim was one of my mentors and was like, this just happened. This might need a little bit of perspective. This might be too soon.
Right.
So there was a lot of stopping, starting, then being like, you've got an incomplete, not terribly interesting story. And then you find this other component that like put it together.
Right.
Yeah. It was
That
all
is such a beautiful process, and with friends of ours, friends Eugenia, Bill Patrick, along the way helping to form this, and you are being published by Running Wild Press, which is Lisa Kastner, another FUMFA friend, and that's a pretty beautiful
Yep.
journey of this story. I mean, not that any of it was easy. And Eugenia was listening to your reading tonight, and you can see her comment there. You both will have to go back and read the comments on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you decide to do that. Absolutely great. We do have a question from Susan popping up here.
A little novella. Susan wrote. She admires your commitment to your husband. Yeah, her wife had a. She's asking, how did adding a baby girl help your marriage?
Yeah.
After all
It didn't.
Okay. Is that another book?
It didn't. Children just put a spotlight on any even the slightest things in your relationship that don't work. Any facet of your partnership that has an issue that maybe you've just kind of, it will be at the forefront and it will be magnified. It didn't.
Right.
It's wonderful and I love her, but it didn't at all.
Right.
At all.
Challenging. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Alicia. Wendy, I'd really like to ask you, we all here have really big connections or kind of small connections to FUMFA, the program there, and sort of your connection to us and my huge connection to it as well is my mentor was Dr. Kim Bridgeford. Yeah. And she was one of the founders, one of the founding professors and mentors there. And of course, she had so many books and did so many other things when she was still around. And I would love to know how did you meet with her? How did you get started with Carmine Street Metrics in that community, and how is it going now?
Sure. I ended up at the Westchester Poetry Conference, which was the premier formalist conference get together, annual, and I met Kim Bridgeford there before she ultimately became the director of that conference, of course. But I met her before then. She had founded the journal, the online journal, Journal of Poetry by Women, formalist poetry by women. And she had founded the Mezzo Cammin Women's Poet Timeline Project. And I remember, I think really probably the first conversation I remember having with her was about the timeline. She was so excited about it, and the scope of it, and she was a big thinker, and the idea of having this database, a compilation of the essays and information about all women poets.
Yes.
There for all time. And she got me very excited about it. And I wrote an essay about Veronica Franco. That's I wrote a bunch of essays for it and several about Italian Renaissance women poets.
Wonderful.
Franco was one of them. And that's posted, it's on the timeline.
Yes, I wrote an essay for it as well.
Which one did you? Oh, I didn't see that.
I wrote Cassia. She was from the Byzantine Empire. She was a nun and a poet.
Interesting. Oh, yeah. I have to look it up now.
Absolutely. Sure. I have to look up yours.
Yeah, really, really. It's so it was a wonderful project, and going to the seminar. The seminar would meet annually at the conference.
Yep.
And the essays would be exchanged ahead of time and peer reviewed and so on at the conference. Then you'd go home and edit them. That was the process. yeah, and then of course when she left the Westchester Poetry Conference and went and founded Poetry by the Sea, the timeline moved there. So
Yes.
I still have, I'm still working with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And of course, Anna Evans.
Yes.
Now, Anna's terrific and a lot of fun to work with. And
she is. She was our guest a few weeks ago, and she'll be a guest with us with a group of readers for International Women's Day next Sunday.
That she's always a lot of fun. She just also read for Carmine Street Metrics recently.
So good. I need to hop on that if it's open. I would love to.
No, actually, it's that we post the we notice the readings on Facebook. There's going to be one.
Everybody should go
today. Yeah, it's usually the first Sunday of the month.
That is so great. I need to catch up with you guys. I'll get in there.
Yeah, you have to get in there. It's kind of, I don't know we have to make it easier for people who don't know us to find, I suppose. Right? That's the problem, right?
I know what you mean. I was just following Kim Bridgeford when I found you guys, but now I know you. Now you got me.
Yeah, of course.
That's so great. Well, Chris, I think we need to get to our famous last question. We do have one last question for Alicia.
Ingrid Smith asked, any plans for a book signing? I'm not sure where book signings are happening these days in the near future. And where can she purchase your book?
You can purchase a signed book. There's a link.
Yeah, I put that up on here, but you can get it anywhere, right? I mean, you can order it.
You can order it anywhere books are sold. For right now, I have a virtual launch event with eShavers, so they're doing the signed book promotion. But I'm working on doing my own kind of something more intimate with COVID and safety in mind. Maybe some sort of Zoom signing and like a virtual reader group where we're doing basically book club it would be a few weeks. Every week I come in, I read, because my book's so small, like it's manageable that way. I come in, do a reading. It's like having a book club where I'm there. I'm just trying to get creative with COVID and stuff for right now, but
absolutely.
Yeah, right now I've got the signing with eShaver, and I've got some other stuff in the works if you want something a little fancier.
Ooh.
I'm working on that, but that's what I have for now.
So everybody follow you on Facebook and social media and catch up with what you're doing so they can get in on that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Well, Chris, we need to ask our famous last question to our guests tonight.
Yep. Yes, we do. This is a two-part question.
Uh-oh.
The first, yes. No, it's easy. Just pay attention. It's first part is what we just call pearl of wisdom. We're just looking for a pearl of wisdom to other writers. Just like whatever comes to your mind first, a pearl of wisdom. Part two of this is a book recommendation. Anything that turns you on, a book. Yeah, any kind of book that you're excited about, that you want other people to read and you think they could get something out of it. So Wendy, why don't you go first?
You mean a book of poetry?
Yeah, well, anything, but
anything you want to share.
Any kind of book.
Okay. Pearl of wisdom. Well, there aren't too many for writers. I think, like Alicia said, life in lockdown is not that different for writers. We sit in rooms by ourselves. That's what we do. But yeah, and so maybe we were kind of, maybe this was easy for us than other people. I don't know, but
I don't know that. I think we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, but on the other hand, you do need to find, and Alicia has, I see a community, you do need to find like-minded people to exchange work with and talk about work with, and also lead into the part two about what you're reading.
Yes.
It's maybe influencing your work, however, indirectly. And I just say that the best book I've read this year, let's just put it that way, was not a book of poetry, actually. It was Daniel Defoe's Journal of the Plague Year.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, have you read that, Chris?
I have not, but this year, of course, it comes up with along with the Camus.
Right. Well, which I also read.
People have been talking. Yeah.
Yeah, also a great book that I also reread. I had read that one before. I didn't know Defoe at all, and he's an amazingly interesting character. And so that what's very striking about that book is he's a great writer, and he has profound insights into human nature, and of course, all great writers do. And it's just so striking how little things have changed since 1720, when he wrote it about the 1665 plague in London. And I guess it's a very heavy book, but very interesting. And I guess the encouraging thing about that is how quickly London snapped back afterwards. And then you see how historically, how quickly cities have always snapped back after major epidemics. And I guess that's the hopeful part about it.
Right.
I recommend not a book of poetry, but
no, but that's such a great recommendation, and especially for what we're going through right now. And a great pearl of wisdom to find your community, find your people.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Wendy.
Thank you.
Pearl of wisdom, and then a book recommendation.
I will agree with the find your people. I have become a TikTok star this year. Not really, but I do enjoy it, and I use it to promote my writing because I'm a bit of a ridiculous person, and that's very on brand for me. So
I saw one of your TikToks like yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the mom one.
So on one of the videos, somebody had offered a prompt like, "What's the best piece of writing advice you've ever gotten?" And in the program we get a lot of it, but the one that stuck out to me, which I got right around the time I started to pivot and find the other half of my story. I was actually doing my third semester project with Carol Ann Davis, and she said, "Stop trying to make everything mean something." Because I was notorious for like setting up the punchline or setting up like the symbolism, but then telling you what it means because I want to make sure you get it, right? Which like ruins it. It just takes it all away. She's like, just write it and let it sit there and just see what happens. And that for me was a game changer, because now I notice it in other writing. I'm like, oh, they told me that it meant something and they're trying to hard. I get it. So I would say that's one of my favorite, and it sticks out to me.
Good one.
And what was the second part of that question?
Book recommendation.
Book recommendation. I've read like 12 in my challenges here, but okay. This one, I have my stack. This one was actually recommended during a David Sedaris event I went to, like right after Lucy was born. I just finished it. The stories are so short. And so A Life of Adventure and Delight. The stories are so short and simple, and there's no he's not trying to do anything with the language, and yet somehow they're impactful.
Yes.
And just I enjoyed it. It was not like anything I've really ever read in recent memory. But I really loved that. Dark Corners by Reuben T. Hazlitt, stuck with me for like a week after I read it. Super quick read. I'm reading A Fall Love Story by Lone Lay, which is just delightful. If you just want to delightful. And then of course Sonia's Pain Woman Takes Your Keys. I loved the variety in there. Like, she took some chances. I learned a lot.
Awesome.
So that's more than one, but you need a variety.
That is so great. And what great shout outs to our friends.
I read 4 books at a time because, if it's before bed, I have to end on my happy book. So that I don't go to bed with all those intense feelings from, reading Dark Corners before bed.
Yeah, right. I know what you mean, Alicia. What great recommendations. And what excellent pearls of wisdom as well. And we just want to thank you one more time for reading with us, Wendy Sloan and Alicia Delory. One more round of applause for you. You have to go to Facebook and YouTube and see all of the comments that people wrote to you, all of the love that they were sharing. Your readings were just so fabulous, so powerful. And we so enjoyed getting to chat with you this evening. So thank you very much. Have a good night. Thank you to our audience as well.
Thanks
So
to everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll be back next week with International Women's Day with a lineup of superstars, including Eugenia Kim.
Yes.
And then after that, open mic. If anybody's into the open mic, let us know.
yes.
Fun.
All right. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a good night. Good night, everybody.
Bye.